I'm gonna show you how I built this website for the Slovenian Environment Agency. That's a pretty big client. My name's Tim, and if there's one thing I know about this website development process, is that it makes for a very interesting video. At first, I just wanted to go over the finished product and talk a little bit about how and why I did certain things. But I really wanted to let you see the behind the scenes. I wanted to show you the actual build process. All of it. But I ran into a problem. That would take way too long. So the plan is, we're gonna go through the most important parts of the process. We're gonna skip over the repetitive, boring stuff, and at the end, I'm gonna show you the finished website. How's that sound? And you might have noticed we already started. What you're seeing on the screen is the footage I recorded while working. It's just sped up a little bit. Just a tiny bit. First, I have to say I didn't design this website. I only built it. It was designed by the team over at DBP Studio, so a huge shout out and thank you to them for the awesome collaboration. I always start by taking a good look at the design in Figma so I can kind of get a sense of what I'm gonna be doing. Then I set up the domain and the hosting, and after that I start installing and setting up the necessary plugins. Here's a list of the plugins I always use. The main page builder I use is Elementor, and the link to it will be in the description. I also always install a child theme, and I make sure I upload all of my necessary custom font files. I add in some CSS that I add to every website I build, which is full of little things that fix some bugs or improve some details. Once that is done, I get started with the global settings inside of Elementor. I set up my global colors and my global fonts and some other things like buttons, as well as the width of my containers and the gaps between them. The reason I do this, if you don't know, is because global settings allow you to reuse styles all throughout your website, which makes building everything a lot easier and a lot faster. I have a great tutorial about these global settings, so if you don't know what this is about, or how to set things up properly, the link will be in the description so you can check it out. Once I'm done with the global settings, I move on to my header. I like to get that out of the way as soon as possible, because first, it's not very exciting to build. Second, it shows up on every page, so it can impact other things on the page, so it's just good to have it ready. And third, it helps me actually navigate the website as I'm building it, because I always have the links to everything available. Speaking of always available, I'm always here. Well, my videos are. They're always here to help you out and to show you cool things about design and websites. So if you enjoy content like this, please make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really does help me out a whole lot. For my mobile menu, I usually, not always, but usually use pop-ups. They just give me way more control over how the header looks and what kind of content I can place inside of it. By the way, make sure you name your containers or your layers in Photoshop. Wherever and whatever you're doing, just name your stuff. Organize it. It's gonna save you from a lot of problems in the future. Trust me. After my header is done, I start with the homepage. Specifically with the hero section of the homepage. From this point on, I'm just kind of following the design in Figma, going step by step. Speaking of Figma, you might have noticed that the Figma file only had the desktop design available, which means I'm the one that has to adapt the design for tablet and mobile. I actually prefer it this way, because making things responsive is usually pretty easy for me design-wise. So if I had a mobile design that I absolutely had to follow, chances are it would be more difficult for me. And this way is obviously also easier for the one designing the website, because they don't really have to worry about mobile. One really important thing I need to mention is that I always make things responsive as I go. After I finish a section on desktop and I'm happy with the responsiveness, I make sure to do the same for tablet and for mobile. I really do not recommend trying to build everything and then making it responsive at the end, because that's gonna be a nightmare. Especially because as you build out the website, it actually gets faster and easier, because you can just copy and paste containers, change out the content, change some settings, and you're done. You don't need to build every single part of the website from scratch. While I was talking about this, we already finished some sections of the website. For the brochure, I created a template because I reused it on many parts of my website. So this way I could just use the template, and if I needed to change anything, I could just change the template and it would change everywhere. I also finished the footer. Next up, we have our other pages. Now, these were actually a massive challenge because the hero sections needed to be animated with CSS. Now, I always use a little bit of CSS just a tiny bit. I used it on several parts of this website. I do that to get results I just couldn't get otherwise, but animations can be really difficult to do, especially when it comes to responsiveness. So I spent quite a bit of time dealing with them. I'm pretty proud of these. They're great. They are responsive. They make the website that much more interesting. For this one and for this one, I got pretty clear instructions on how to do them. And for these two, I was actually the one who came up with the idea of how to animate them. I love this magnifying glass one. It's just really cool. And yes, I am bragging a little bit, just a tiny bit. Otherwise, most of the content is pretty standard. Images, text, buttons, nothing out of the ordinary. I added in some motion effects to some things, just to add some life and movement to the website. I just continued this way until all of my pages were pretty much done. I was in contact with the designer all of the time, and because the client wanted some changes, some tiny things got changed and fixed in the process. These changes can really add up and make the project take longer, so you do need to keep them in mind before you actually begin working, so you don't do a bunch of work for free. Make sure you always account for some small changes when you're setting your price, and set clear boundaries as to what is and what isn't included in the original scope of the project. But all in all, the whole process of building this website went pretty much as smooth as you can expect, and I'm really happy with how everything turned out. When the actual pages were done, I went ahead and I set up the basic SEO settings. I always include this in my project because it not only affects SEO, it also affects how the pages display when they're shown in Google or when they're shared on social media, so it's really important. I don't want Google to randomly take snippets of text from the page. Of course, in the end, Google still shows what Google wants to show, but even then, I want to control what users see as much as I can. With that in mind, I set up the featured image, the title, and the short description. I set up the most important keywords. I go ahead and I set up my H tags for my headings, and depending on the agreement, I'll set up the alt text for images as well. And with that, the basics of SEO are pretty much taken care of, at least from a technical standpoint. I finished the website by creating the privacy policy page and setting up a cookie plugin and taking care of accessibility. And that's pretty much all there is to it. A lot of the build was just repeating the basics, copying and modifying existing containers. These are the things that make up the majority of every website build. And then you have special things like these animations that take way more time and effort because they require a lot more customization. There is not an exact tutorial on how to do, for example, the magnifying glass animation. Well, now that I think about it, I do have a lot of tutorials that show the methods I used to animate it. Hint, hint. But the exact animation is one of a kind, so it involved a lot of problem solving. And that is where really understanding the basics of the tools and technologies you're using comes in handy, because it allows you to find creative solutions to problems you haven't seen before. Now, let's take a look at the finished website. If you enjoyed this video, first make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, and then go check out this video next. If you found this one interesting, I guarantee you're gonna find that one very interesting as well. Thank you for watching.